Hello everyone. We are very happy to be here again with a very important international broadcast. This night we have very important guests. Tonight we're going to talk about electrosensitivity worldwide, the current landscape, and we are very happy to receive Dr. Magda Havas, that is a Canadian scientist and professor emerita at Trent University, international recognized for her research on health effects of electromagnetic fields and electrosensitivity. She has published extensively and is a leading voice in the promoting safer use of wireless technologies. Also, we are very happy to receive Sheena Symington, that's director of the Electro Sensitive Society in Canada, working to support people with EHS, raise public awareness, and advocate for safer, lower EMF environment through education and community outreach. Also, we have here Aline. Hello, good night, and Sylvia, and Anna, and Melina, and we are all here to interview you. And we thank you very much for this space of awareness, and it's a very important moment that we are finishing our White and Yellow June. Is a public health campaign in Brazil that we hope that is spread for another countries. We watch a small video before, and then we go with Dr. Magda and Sheena to talk with us. Okay, can we watch the video now? You put the video, Aline?
Yes. This video is just a little bit what happened in our White and Yellow June of 2025. It's close your microphone.
Okay, so now we go with Dr. Magda and Sheena. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation, and now is with you. The microphone is closed?
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, now it's open.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Sheena and I will be giving a short presentation, and then we'll open it up for any kind of questions that you and your audience may have. And I'll start sharing my screen if it works. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you once again for inviting us to talk about electro hypersensitivity and the current landscape. What we'd like to do is give a presentation about some of the problems that we're having and why we have electro hypersensitivity in the first place, and end it with recommendations as to what people can do to minimize their exposure and to optimize their health. So we've entitled this Electromagnetic Hygiene because we think hygiene is very important from all perspectives, and what you need to know to prevent electromagnetic injury. Here we have the electromagnetic spectrum. And it's divided into two parts. One consists of ionizing radiation, and I think everyone recognizes how harmful ionizing radiation is. But the part that we're most concerned about is non-ionizing radiation. And we believe that these different forms at different frequencies are contributing to electromagnetic pollution. And they're given different names depending on the frequency of the wavelength. It could be microwave radiation, radio frequency radiation, or just electromagnetic radiation. And that refers to anything above 1,000 hertz frequency, although that varies a little bit in the literature. And then we have something called extremely low frequency electromagnetic pollution, and that refers to our use of electricity around the globe. What we know is that electromagnetic radiation, EMR, and electromagnetic fields, EMF, are a form of pollution. And just like we have chemical pollution from stationary sources or mobile sources, we have indoor air quality issues. Some of our behavior determines how much we're exposed to. And we have wearables as well. Perfume, for example, is no longer accepted in hospitals because of multiple chemical sensitivity. And similarly, we have wearables that emit microwave radiation and should be avoided as much as possible. This form of pollution is generated by wireless technology, which is constantly increasing. Electronic devices, particularly energy efficient devices, believe it or not, and with our use of electricity. The documented health effects fall into three major categories, one of which are cancers, impaired reproduction, and neurological disorders. And these neurological disorders are generally regarded as electro-hypersensitivity. When you combine all three, the cancers, the reproductive impairment, and the neurological disorders, we have something that can contribute to electromagnetic injury. And one of the things scientists are particularly concerned about is what are the mechanisms involved? And here we have some of the mechanisms listed. We're not going to focus on the mechanisms, but we do recognize quite a few of them, although the situation is still quite complex. Now, the Americans for Responsible Technology in 2020 provided 224 studies that dealt with reproduction, cancers, and neurological problems. And the interesting aspect about this is that these are the same issues that were documented more than 50 years ago. So we have nervous system issues, we have blood disorders, we have genetic changes, all of which contribute to the reproduction, the cancers, and the neurological problems. Now, when it comes to evidence, for evidence on cancers, we have three major multi-year, multi-million-dollar studies conducted at three different frequencies, 2,450 megahertz, 900 megahertz, and 1,800 megahertz. The first one was by the US Air Force in 1992, and the two more recent ones are by the National Toxicology Program and the Ramazzini Institute. All three of these large studies showed an increase in cancers, different types of cancers. And so we have evidence that is reproducible over a range of frequencies that shows that this radiation causes cancer because these are controlled laboratory studies. And what we have here are links. We'll provide you with a PDF of this. And what we have here are links where you can actually go to those particular studies. We also have evidence for various types of cancers in humans. The ones we're most concerned about are gliomas, which is a malignant brain tumor that is often fatal, acoustic neuromas that affect the nerve in the ear, salivary gland tumors that are on the side of your face, and breast cancer for women who store their cell phone in their bra. Some recent tumors that are showing up include thyroid, and your thyroid is very close to where you would hold a cell phone. Some of the cell phone antennas have the radiation right beneath, right near your throat. And so that would could contribute to thyroid cancers, which are increasing dramatically, primarily among women. It also includes colorectal cancer as well for people who store their cell phone in a hip pocket, for example. And then in 2011, so that's already 14 years ago, the International Agency for Research on Cancer classified radiofrequency radiation as a possible human carcinogen. And they said it was possible rather than probable, because at that time, there was only one large-scale animal study, and that was the US Air Force. Since then, we've had 2 additional ones. And so what we really need is a review of the IARC recommendation to move it from a possible human carcinogen to a probable human carcinogen. And we have the International Classification of Diseases, Code 10, that identifies radiofrequency injury as a W90.0 code. So the medical authorities are beginning to recognize that radiofrequency radiation and extremely low frequency electromagnetic fields can contribute to cancer. I'd like to share with you just one study on reproductive impairment. And as you can see here, there are multiple studies looking at male fertility, effects on the fetus, and effects on young children and adolescents. In total, 68 reproductive studies have been identified by the Americans for Responsible Technology. There are many more, but these are the ones that they've identified as being of concern. And here I'd like to show you one of them from a study that was in 2008. And you can see here that this is sperm count down here. The blue refers to men who do not use a cell phone. Red is for men who use a cell phone for less than 2 hours a day. Green, 2 to 4 hours a day, and purple, greater than 4 hours a day. And this is showing the change in sperm count. And you can see here the sperm count is much lower. So there are fewer sperm. They're moving much more slowly. They live for much shorter periods of time. And very few of them are actually morphologically normal. So these are an increasing number of sperm that are deformed. They have multiple heads or multiple tails. And because of that, you're going to have problems with fertility with sperm that are simply unable to do their job. We have evidence for neurological injury, which is the one that is most commonly associated with electromagnetic hypersensitivity. Dr. Henry Lai from the University of Washington has been studying electromagnetic radiation for many, many years. He is now retired. And he looked at studies from 2007 to 2020 that looked at neurological effects of radiofrequency radiation. He found 355 studies, and of those, 3/4 of them, or 73%, showed effects, neurological effects of radiofrequency radiation. The 27%, or 1/4 of the studies, showed no effects. So we've got a lot of studies showing that there's problems when it comes to your nervous system, when it comes to exposure to electromagnetic fields. And this is one of my publications. Electrohypersensitivity is an environmentally induced disability that requires immediate attention. And here I document some of the neurological studies that are experienced and that are increasing in severity among our elderly and among children. So things like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder are ones that are increasing abnormally rapidly, and it has to do with something in the environment. Radiofrequency radiation is probably one of the causes of these particular neurological disorders, although there are others as well. When it comes to symptoms of electrohypersensitivity, they're quite generic: sleep difficulties, chronic fatigue, pain associated with different parts of the body, mood disorders, especially anxiety and depression, cognitive disorders. People are having difficulty with short-term memory, difficulty concentrating. They say they have a foggy brain. visual disturbances, tired eyes, blurred vision. And some of this is simply spending a lot of time looking at a computer screen at a set distance where your eyes don't get a chance to focus in and focus out at different depths. Hearing problems, tinnitus is a very common one for those who are electro-hypersensitive. Heart irregularities, particularly an irregular or a rapid heart rate when they're exposed. Skin rashes, itchiness, psoriasis, and excessive nighttime urination, and bedwetting among children. These are some of the more common symptoms of electro-hypersensitivity, which is now called electromagnetic radiation syndrome. Now, there are a number of names that have been used to represent this illness. The early one was neurasthenia, which stands for a weakening of the nervous system. And it was primarily among switchboard operators that they found this in the early 1900s. During World War II, there was microwave syndrome or radio wave sickness that were common among radar operators. In the 1980s, Ole Johansson recognized screen dermatitis for people who spent a lot of time in front of computer screens. Idiopathic environmental intolerance attributed to electromagnetic fields was recommended by the World Health Organization because they said we don't know what is causing the sensitivity. So idiopathic means we simply don't know the cause. Rapid aging syndrome is one that I coined in 2008 because this radiation makes your body age much more quickly by oxidative stress mechanisms. And the most recent one that came out this year is electromagnetic radiation syndrome. The scientists studying this feel that there should be just one term that everyone uses rather than a multiple set of terms that is quite confusing to the public. Now, when it comes to electro-hypersensitivity or electromagnetic radiation syndrome, Michael Bevington, in 2019, published this paper and said that approximately 0.65% of those affected can't work, 1.5% are severely affected, 5% are moderately affected, and 30% have mild symptoms. Now, the fact that you're asymptomatic, you may not have any symptoms, doesn't mean it's not harming your body. It simply means you're asymptomatic. And when we take these percentages and apply them to different population densities, for Canada, for example, this is a slightly older slide. Our population is closer to 40 million now, but we have 247,000 who can't work, more than 500,000 who are severely affected, and 11 million that are mildly affected. For Brazil, these are the values. So we have 212 million people, 1.4% can't work, 10.6 are moderately affected, 63.6 are mildly affected. So we're talking about a very large population of people who are adversely affected by this radiation. And these are the values for South America. So we're talking about 2.8 million people who can't work, 6.4 are severely affected. So we're talking about a very large population. A lot of the work that I've done is trying to identify how to document electro-hypersensitivity in individuals. And one of the things we found is that this radiation affects the blood, and it causes something called rouleau formation. And here you see two slides. One is before, these are red blood cells under a dark field microscope. And you can see that they're nice and round, and a few of them are close together, but most of them are loose and not sticking together. After exposing my body to Wi-Fi for 10 minutes, this is what my blood looked like with a live blood analysis. And you can see that every single cell is sticking to each other. And these are some of the consequences and some of the symptoms that this causes. So when red blood cells are sticking together, they can't exchange oxygen, they can't remove waste products from your body as effectively And some of the more severe consequences are heart attacks and strokes. We've also looked at the heart. This is one of our studies looking at microwave radiation and how it affects the heart using heart rate variability. And this is a result from one highly reactive person showing their heartbeat, 65 beats per minute, when they're sham exposed, so they're not exposed to radiation. When they're exposed to radiation from a cordless phone, the base station of a cordless phone, you can see their heart rate jumped from 65 to 86 beats per minute, and it became quite irregular. As soon as the phone was unplugged, it went back to normal, and as soon as it was plugged in again, we had the same symptoms. So this person is reacting through their heart. So it's something that's affecting their heart and their autonomic nervous system. And basically what it's doing is it's creating a stress response. Here we have another study looking at blood sugar. In this case, we were looking at dirty electricity rather than microwave radiation. And here we have a woman showing her blood sugar in gray before her walk, in green after a 20-minute walk. And you can see that her blood sugar has dropped down to a fairly normal level down here with the red line. Now, when it's raining outside or when it's too dark to go outside, the woman will exercise on a treadmill. And in gray, you see her blood sugar before a 20-minute walk. And in blue, you see it after a 20-minute walk. And in contrast to what happens when she walks outside, when she walks on a treadmill, her blood sugar actually goes up rather than down. And this is unheard of. And very few medical doctors know about this. So one of the ways that you can test if you're electrohypersensitive is to simply expose yourself to a treadmill, measure your blood sugar if you're type 1 or a type 2 diabetic, and see what happens to your blood sugar. If it goes up, then chances are you're electrohypersensitive. Now what I'd like to do is turn it over to Sheena, who will help us understand some of the solutions to this radiation.
Thanks very much, Magda. And again, what we really want to know is how to reduce electromagnetic exposure, because reducing electrosmog will provide a healthier environment for everyone, not just those who know that they're affected by the electromagnetic exposure. Thanks, Magda. If you go to the next slide. So preventing electromagnetic injury. What hospitals have done to identify and reduce electrosmog exposure. So we have a hospital in Cyprus that has removed Wi-Fi from their pediatric facilities. And I have been successful at having and helping educate 12 hospitals here in Canada that is reducing their electrosmog exposure, containing that type of pollution within their facilities in order to provide access for those who are disabled in the presence of wireless technology, for example. We're currently working with hospitals in Europe to help them also implement this type of accommodation within a healthcare setting. So not only at hospitals, but at medical clinics and that kind of thing. There's an education piece, and then simply strategies on how to contain this pollution within the hospital setting. They're very familiar with containing viruses and containing different types of infections. So we just educate them along that same basis of containing the electromagnetic pollution. There have been continuing education for doctors. There have been 2 EMF medical conferences, both in 2019 and 2021. And there's a nursing textbook that also educates about electrosmog. There's been international recognition of electromagnetic injury. In Canada here at the Women's College Hospital, they diagnose EHS, or electromagnetic radiation syndrome. In 2000, it was recognized as a functional impairment in Sweden. In 2002, the US Access Board recognized electrohypersensitivity. And Magda and I also presented to the National Council on Disabilities in recognition of EHS and how to provide, again, access to healthcare facilities for those who are disabled in the presence of electrosmog. We'll just get Magda to get it back on here. It'll be just a second.
The presentation closed. Just a second. I think you need to share again, Dr.
Yeah,
Magda.
just share it again. Thank you. So again, hospitals I've found are very eager to provide this accommodation once they know how. A lot of people are saying no because they don't know how to actually do it. They think electrosmog is everywhere. There's no way to reduce it. It's very, very difficult to do this. But what we've found is that you can contain these signals. You can reduce electrosmog in hospitals, and being able to show them exactly the steps on how to do that. Most people are very eager to actually implement these accommodation strategies. And like I said, to date, I've had 12 hospitals that have been able to do that. Thanks, Magda, if you just push play from that slide. And the Canadian Human Rights Commission, they're looking at legal and legal aspects of EHS. And they have, we've been quite successful, but not nearly as much as we need to be to date.
20 horas, hora de microprotocolos.
And if you stop sharing and then share again, just because we can see everything, that'd be great. And so, like I said, it's been nice. I've been contacted by doctors in Europe that are also interested in having this kind of hospital accommodation. And I would be eager to help those in Brazil who are interested in having their hospitals really provide access to people who are EHS.
So if we have a hospital here in Brazil that's interested in have a low EMF environment, maybe we can tell them to look for you and
totally. Yeah, I would
that's amazing.
Do that. Absolutely.
That's
and there's
amazing.
different ways that we can do that with electromagnetic hygiene. So first of all, you really make sure that they don't have wireless technology. So you turn off all the wireless technology. Some of them you can power down. You can power down the Wi-Fi routers. You can power them down. Some of them can work very, very well, even at 16%. So they can still provide lots of access, but you don't have that radiation spilling off into other areas. The hospitals and schools, they're often very big concrete structures because they have that fire safety component. So that type of structure really lends itself to being able to contain electrosmog. So you avoid the infrastructure piece as not having wireless routers throughout the building. You have fiber optics and Ethernet cabling. So you really look at the infrastructure and reduce the wireless component as much as possible. Are you able to share, Magda?
It's not sharing yet.
Oh, okay, sharing on mine. So hold on.
Yeah, it's not sharing yet. Another question, Sheena, you said the women's college hospital in Canada who were able to diagnose EHS. That's a very important point. This is specific objective diagnosis, because usually they say that diagnosis is just based on what the person speaks, not very objective markers, biomarkers. So do you know more details about this women's college diagnosis?
Yeah. When you play, it goes off for some reason. So we saw it there just for a second and then it stopped. With Women's College Hospital, yeah, so if you just, it might be on the different screen that you have it. There it is. Yeah, okay. Lovely.
Great.
So the infrastructure piece and the personal devices. I can also give you a link to the Women's College Hospital because they do a detailed intake, and they do like when you go to a doctor, you talk about your back pain, you talk about different problems that you have. There is not necessarily always a confirmation of all of those things, but Belpalm also has some biomarkers that he has had in his papers, and I have links to education for doctors on my website for electrosensitivesociety.com. So a lot of that detail of exactly how to go about that diagnosis piece is there. So you're right, it's an absolutely critical piece. Can you forward to the next slide, please, Magda? And so again, it's looking at the infrastructure and the personal devices. So those are the two components of where you can really contain the signals. And we'll just go on to the next one because we'll give you a printout of these details on how to implement stuff. You want to shield wireless meters or any kind of cell phone boosters or other wireless devices that cannot be turned off. When I started looking at hospitals, there were so many devices that they actually didn't have control over. They had cell companies that were putting mini cell towers inside the hospitals and they didn't have any control over it, so they couldn't actually turn them off. So we had to shield them. Turn off fluorescent lighting is another easy way to reduce the electrosmog. You want to measure and locate and avoid high electric and magnetic fields. You want to unplug the assessment equipment, especially in the vicinity of a patient, especially when it's not being used. And you want to measure and locate and eliminate the sources of dirty electricity. So basically, you measure all of the different, when Magda was talking about the electromagnetic spectrum, you want to measure those different frequencies that really make up that electrosmog component, identify the sources, and eliminate or block it. Number 6. And you want to establish environmentally friendly waiting rooms, treatment rooms, and inpatient rooms. So you have like a pathway of treatment where people are waiting, not next to other people that have those mobile devices. They have separate waiting rooms. They have separate elevators. There's just really easy ways on how to contain these signals within a hospital. You want to post signs, no wireless within 10 meters of the patient. And for those with severe environmental sensitivities, reducing that waiting time. So not having them at the hospital in that high exposure for long periods of time. You have them checking in at home. You have them doing that by phone prior to they get to the hospital. You come when there's very few people at the hospital, so there isn't as many other personal devices. And really critical, avoid placement of cell towers on top of hospitals. I don't know if it's the same in Brazil, but we drive around here and there are cell towers on top of the hospitals. So it's supposed to be a place for healing. So what you also want to do is monitor the invisible. So these are sounds of all of these devices. It's easy to not see, not know that it's there. And these simple meters that some of you have measuring with the Global EMF project, they turn these wireless signals into sound. So this is what some of them sound like. That's okay. Maybe we won't get that. There you go. Just press that play button. Play and then play on the slide. Yep. In the middle of the slide. Yep. Oh, you didn't share your sound. That's okay. No problem at all. So what these meters do is it turns the microwave radiation into sound so you can hear it. And that really allows you to identify and eliminate the sources. So a meter is a really critical piece in finding what you want to eliminate in your home. So these are recommendations for individuals. I went kind of through the infrastructure piece of a building, like a hospital or a school or a medical facility or a workplace facility. These are recommendations for individuals. All of these devices that you can see on the screen, all of them emit radio frequency radiation. You want to minimize or eliminate them from your home. You want to get rid of any of these wireless devices, and you really want to focus on your bedroom. You want to focus on that bedroom environment. You rest, digest, and recover when you're sleeping, and you really need to eliminate any electrosmog in your sleeping environment. So not only measuring wireless radiation, but electric fields, magnetic fields, and dirty electricity. These are recommendations for communities. You want wired fiber for that last mile for solutions. You want fiber optics coming to your door and then using wired devices of Ethernet cabling within your home. You want to be very proactive about having an antenna siting protocol, because what happens is these cell tower companies come into communities and say, we're putting our cell tower here and you can't say anything about it. That's not true. all of the community, especially here in Canada, you have a say in where your cell towers go and what your antenna siting protocol is. So really knowing that and putting in a very proactive, protective siting protocol is an absolutely critical piece for communities. And finally, reinventing wires, that future of landlines and networks. It really gives you a step-by-step process on how to use wired technology in your communities instead of wireless. So again, containing that, using fiber optics, wiring wherever you can. Will there be some use of wireless technologies in first response? Perhaps, but you don't have to blanket the whole area all the time, causing all of these other problems just because there might be a first response need for it. A lot of people have said to Magda and I, if it was really harmful, they would be saying so. So as she showed you from the Zoe archives from 50 years ago, they are saying that there is a problem. They are saying that it's harmful. So I won't go through it, but all of the US government and research scientists from around the world, manufacturers themselves, the cell tower company, the cell phone companies, if you actually look in the fine print, they say to keep the device away from your body. There's medical academies, even insurance agents do not insure against radio frequency health effects. So governments recently have banned Wi-Fi from schools, accommodating those with EHS. There's public utility commissions are opting for you to be able to opt out of smart meters in Iowa, also here in Canada. And recently there's been EHS accommodation in Spain and the UK, and cell phones that cause brain tumors in Italy. So we'll give you the links to all of these harmful. And just another links to scientific resources that you guys can look up further. So we'll give all of that to you. Thank you. And we can just open it up to questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magda and Sheena. Very interesting. I find very interesting this Bevington percentages of the population is slightly different from a previous one that we saw maybe 2 or 3 years ago that was divided in 3% severe, around 30% moderate, and asymptomatic maybe 65%. And that's very interesting. Now we have like four stages, and this is even extreme severe, let's say, can't work, 0.65%. So how was this change for this older percentage to this Bevington one? The microphone.
I'm not quite certain how Michael Bevington came up with those particular values. I think they're an underestimate. I think more people are being adversely affected than is indicated in that. But even if we use his values, the number of people that are severely affected who are disabled by this radiation is astronomical. It's totally unacceptable when it's something that we can avoid simply by changing the way we behave and changing where we place certain type of technology and what technology we use. So I wouldn't focus too much on whether it's 0.65 or 3% or 5%. There's so many people who are suffering from this radiation that we simply have to educate, bring awareness to this issue, and then have the individuals who can take care of themselves do so, and those that require expert help to have the experts understand what is going on as well.
Yeah, the numbers for Brazil are astronomical. Even for Canada is pretty high. So I would like to have access to this Bevington work. I don't know if you have the paper. Maybe he can define what's severe, what's moderate, what he considers mild.
Mild, yeah.
Yeah, mild. Yeah, that's interesting for us to use also here, these numbers.
He's recently written a chapter for a book that's coming out later this year, where he says that there's evidence of electro hypersensitivity going back to the 1700s. the people who first started working with the technology had some of the symptoms that we call electro hypersensitivity or electromagnetic radiation syndrome. So it's been ongoing for a much longer period of time. And the result that I showed for the switchboard operators, that was actually a legal case here in Canada where the switchboard operators won. And this is at the turn of the last century. They were being shocked when they were plugging things in. And they developed all sorts of adverse health effects, particularly neurological, and they won the legal case back in the 1900s. So, we have a lot of evidence that this is real. It's recognized not only by the some medical organizations, but legally as well.
Thank you. Anna, Sylvia, Melina, do you have any question? It's open if you want to.
Oh yeah. Pleasure to have you here, Dr. Magda Havas and Sheena. I'm an architect, and as an architect, I'm really concerned about our home health, and I'm working with this because we need to have a safe place to take care of ourselves. And as you told us all during the presentation, the place where I put my concerns is about our bedroom, our bed area. And what could you tell us about this area, about the wire around the bed, if it could be dangerous for us too, or only about the wireless?
There are aspects. So you want to have no wireless technology in your bedroom. You can have a cell phone. If it's charging, keep it away from you. You want it into airplane mode or totally off. If you need to use your alarm or you want to listen to music or you have a reminder, if it's in airplane mode with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off, those things will still help, still respond, like you can still interact with the phone if you need to. But it's really critical that you eliminate anything wireless in your bedroom. Like you already said, ideally turning the power off to your bedroom so you cut the electric and the magnetic field to your bedroom would be very helpful. Filtering dirty electricity. So again, having some of these really simple handheld meters to measure your environment, or having a professional come in to have them indicate what you can do to eliminate the exposure in your bedroom. But there's some things, so you have to look at the infrastructure, so the wiring of the bedroom, and then your personal devices, really ensuring that there's nothing also in the room below your bedroom. Some people have a cordless telephone in the kitchen below their bedroom, and then that would be a radiation source right close to their bed. So you want to kind of think about what are in the rooms adjacent and below and above your bedroom. Sometimes if you have an independent living space and you have a bedroom or a room that's in the basement, that can often be easily contained of not having wireless signals because it's below ground.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You also want to make sure that you don't have a lot of metal in your bedroom. If you're living near a cell tower, for example, that radiation can come in, and if there's metal there, it will be reflected like a mirror. So it can increase your exposure. And some people make sure that they don't have wires in their mattress, for example, the coils, that they don't have a metal bed frame, because all of that can redistribute the radiation and increase your exposure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would like to make, can I speak?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, I want to make 2 questions, but before I do so, I would like to thank Dr. Magda Havas for making the foreword for this book. This book is directly for parents and also electrosensitive people. It's a step-by-step for parents. And Dr. Magda Havas, she wrote an extraordinary foreword for this book. So it will reach thousands of people. and help people. That is what that's our mission, right?
Could I also comment, like you've got that book in Portuguese and English, right?
Yes.
2 versions of it. And when I read the book, I was really impressed because what Sylvia does is she helps parents understand what they need to do in very simple language. There's nothing highly technical or difficult to understand. And depending on how old your children are, whether they're 2 or 3 years old or whether they're teenagers, you have to do different things with them to minimize their exposure. So it's highly recommended for anyone who wants to protect their family. It's promoted for parents, but if you're a grandparent or an aunt and uncle, I would strongly encourage you to read it and to incorporate many of the things that Sylvia recommends, including for adults. We're not immune from this technology, but of course, we really want to protect children because they're our future. And if we don't protect them, then we really don't have much of a future. So thank you, Sylvia, for writing that book in the way that you wrote it for the audience that really needs to learn more about this. So thank you very much for that.
And thank you for the suggestions for improving the book, and great forward. The book is available on Amazon, so anybody can buy it. It's called Playing with Invisible. Playing with the Invisible. I would like to make questions. One of them, I'm curious to know, Sheena, you're talking about the hospitals. And are the hospitals that go after you, or you go after the hospitals to try to implement those EHS procedures?
Great question, because I am helping individuals who need the accommodation, and then I educate the hospital to provide that for that individual. So I have tried to educate hospitals on their own, but they will always say, well, when there's somebody who needs that, get back in touch. So I've done it through the individual who really needs that accommodation to happen for them to be able to access the hospital. They give me permission to talk to the hospital on their behalf. And then I go in and help implement the changes that are necessary, both from the infrastructure piece and from the signage and the personal devices piece. There are steps to how to accommodate in a hospital setting on my website. So electrosensitivesociety.com under how to accommodate. So I really want to make it easy for people. And it really is quite simple. And I work well with the hospital, finding out what their needs are, because we still want them to be able to do their job, and we want to be able to provide access. So it's a win-win for everyone. And then after I had that first hospital, those different hospitals then speak to each other to say, okay, so this is what we did, this is what we did, but it is always accommodating that patient. So it's patient first and then the hospital.
I think the most challenging thing is the needing for the hospital to want this, because also the hospital, if it's a private hospital, it thinks about the costs and if it will bring more clients. So it would be amazing if we have at least one hospital in Brazil that would like to have a EHS safe room or floor or wherever. I think the most challenging is starts the need with the hospital administration. They say, oh, we want this, because it's not we talk about this, but we are in a very small bubble.
Often when I start with the hospital administrators, it doesn't go anywhere. If I go in with through the patient experience office, so the people where you would make a complaint, or if you had a special dietary requirement, you would speak to them. So it's the patient advocacy, the patient experience. It's those people that I speak with. So I start with them, and you educate with them. Their job is to make you comfortable in their hospital. That's their job. So if you need a clean electromagnetic environment to be comfortable, then they're going to do that. So you start with them and you educate not just one, but their whole department They said no originally because they didn't know how to do it. If you're asked to do something you don't know how to do, I almost guarantee, if you're not Magda, just kidding, you'll say no if you don't know how to do stuff, right? Like there's a personality component here, because if you don't know how to do something well, then you're reluctant to do it. So they said no. So I went to the hospital and measured the hospital myself. Since then, I've got building biologists to volunteer their time to help measure hospitals. So we have a lot of people worldwide who do some measuring now from a professional point of view, and pairing them up with the patient who needs the accommodation, the building biologist who can go into the hospital and say, oh, you just do X, Y, and Z. Because contrary to belief, it's not expensive to do. It's actually quite simple to contain those frequencies because of the infrastructure and the really thick walls that hospitals are usually built with. So when I first started trying to eliminate the exposure in the hospital, I was shocked at how effectively we could eliminate it, just doing some simple strategies that I've outlined in the electrosensitivesociety.com website. So it's the interest in doing it and then making it really simple in order to be able to achieve.
Are there any hospital in Latin America that you know that it's interested in Latin America? Any hospital?
Are there any what in South America?
Hospital? Any
Not
hospital?
that I know of. But again, like I said, educating on that ground level of going to the hospital, like all of you can pick a different healthcare facility and we can see how far we can go. Because what I also say too, inevitably, because of the legal cases, they're going to, like eventually, like when Magda was saying, when it becomes a class 2A carcinogen, when it becomes necessary, and I'm naively hopeful that that will happen soon, they are going to be required to provide a safe environment for their hospital, right? So let's just get ahead of the curve. So that's the thing. It's that type of education. This is happening. There's lots of people that are affected by this. This is a pollutant. So you come from a pollution perspective, not so much from an EHS perspective. Nobody should be exposed to this. Nobody should be unknowingly and exposed to this. We should be minimizing it, no matter if we're sensitive or not. So coming from the point of view that people are going to heal more quickly, it's a healthier environment to provide. People want to provide a healthy environment to work in, to live in, to heal in a hospital. So it's just shifting a bit. I got my foot in the door with having to accommodate, but shifting more, because some of the hospitals, more so the medical clinics, dental offices, they accommodated some EHS patients and they felt so differently at the end of the workday. They actually stayed wired. They eliminated the wireless technology in their medical facilities because they could not believe the difference at the end of the day that they felt. So it's that education piece that really is helpful.
It's a very nice narrative, because you say that, oh, pretty soon will be like 2A or group 1. So you are ahead of. So it's very good narrative. We are thinking about that many years, that sometimes when you talk about hygiene, EMF, people always think that you are going like in a different to the past, and not to go to the future. That's very interesting narrative that we all have to go with it.
Yeah, you shift to the success for everyone.
Yeah. Another question, Anna, Elena. There's a one from Carla here. What symptoms can dirty electricity cause?
Magda, you're muted.
The studies that we've done with dirty electricity shows that people who have certain neurological conditions, multiple sclerosis, for example, when we filter their home, and if they don't have other devices like Wi-Fi and nearby cell tower, their symptoms of multiple sclerosis improve quite dramatically and very quickly within a matter of a few weeks. And when I was first doing this research, I was working with a woman who used a walker. And so I went to her home to measure levels of dirty electricity. We recorded her symptoms for several weeks. And then we put filters in and then recorded her symptoms for several weeks again. And when I first went to her home, she said to me, phone me 10 minutes before you arrive, and I'll open the door for you. And when you come, just knock on the door and come in, because it takes her such a long time with the walker to get to the door. And we did that. And the second time I went back to visit her, she was totally different. She told me that she had been away on vacation with her husband and she was dancing. And this is a woman who couldn't walk. And I was so impressed and amazed and found it difficult to actually comprehend that I began to take videos of these people, like before and after videos. And you can see the difference. It's incredible. Because I thought no one's going to believe me, because I was having a hard time believing it and I was seeing it firsthand. Not everyone we treated benefited from it, but a very large percentage did. So neurological problems can benefit from reducing your dirty electricity exposure. The blood sugar test that I showed you with the woman on the treadmill, we've tested several people who are diabetics and find that if they're diabetic and they're electro-hypersensitive, then they have difficulty controlling their blood sugar. And if they reduce their exposure, their blood sugar will go down. And if they increase their exposure, their blood sugar will go up. This is known as brittle diabetes. And brittle diabetes refers to diabetics who, for some reason, can't control their blood sugar. It suddenly spikes and suddenly drops. And I think part of that is due to the fact that they're either exposed or they're not exposed, and they don't even realize it. We've tested hospitals schools for dirty electricity and for sick building syndrome. And we found that there were a lot of the symptoms that I presented on electro-hypersensitivity, the chronic fatigue, the difficulty concentrating, the mood disorders, all of these diminished when we filtered schools with dirty electricity. And we found that students who had asthma required inhalers much less frequently when the dirty electricity was reduced. So there's all sorts of biological effects that are attributed to dirty electricity that we can minimize simply by filtering the radiation. However, if you have microwaves exposure as well, then filtering dirty electricity is only getting rid of one of the potential problems. So you really have to minimize your exposure to other sources of radiation as well.
So can I make a question? Do you think that we have something that dirt electricity can affect something about sinusite, Fabiano, sinusitis or rhinitis, something like that? No,
I don't know. I don't understand. Sorry.
Sinus
Sinus.
problem.
Yeah, sinus and Anna, do you know rhinitis? Rhinitis.
Rhinitis or yeah.
Rhinitis.
There is something about this too.
Okay, I haven't heard about that. Have you, Sheena?
No, but a lot of the times when people will say, well, how can this, give you all of those symptoms? It's really how your immune system works. It's kind of like in my mind, I think of it as like little weak links within your system. Because if you think about it as a stressor, you think of it as interfering with your immune system function, because some people have skin problems, some people have bedwetting problems. You eliminate the dirty electricity and the bedwetting stops. So it really, but it doesn't happen for everybody that way. It's like it's what else is going on in their symptoms, what other toxin load that they have that they're dealing with. So I haven't heard of this, but you know yourself that if there's something suppressing your immune system function, and then that's removed, your immune system can deal with things so much better, right? So there is evidence in the scientific literature that it interferes with immune system function. So rather than, again, that symptom being really tied to the symptom, it's more what your system is already dealing with and what your kind of sensitivities or susceptibilities are, if that makes sense. That's how I see it more. And thinking of it as a toxin really lends itself to doing that, rather than this exposure causes this symptom, this, like, you know. So it's because it's taken us a really long time to try and tease some of this out, because as Magda said, you know, what would happen with one person didn't happen with another. But there was some reproducibility of it. And it often depends on what else that person is dealing with, what other precursors or what other things are taxing their system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anna, go ahead.
Hi. Hi, everyone. First of all, I'm honored to be here with you all. I'm Ana Cunha. I'm architect too. Actually a neuro architect now. And I'm part of Slow Phone now too. I administrate the EHS group inside the Slow Phone with 57 members. And I'm gonna make some questions asked by the members of the group. Well, first of them is, does an induction stove have any harmful radiation for those who use it?
Induction stove, the induction stove.
Yeah, I'm afraid I haven't followed information on the induction stove. Have you, Sheena?
Yeah, there's a really high magnetic field. Stoves in general, if they're an electric field, there will be a really high electric and magnetic field coming from them. What we recommend is increasing your distance, you know, using those back elements. So you increase your body's distance from it. You know, standing on top and stirring. It's interesting. You'll have to measure it. Like, that's what it really comes down to, because as Magda said, the technology changes so rapidly. And even, you know, we did a lot of research on light bulbs, like the best light bulbs to use. So we found this one light bulb and we were so excited. We're telling everybody about it. And then I would go and I would measure the light bulb that somebody had installed, and it was a different reading. Like, some of the batches, even though it was the exact same light bulb, would be different. So not to cause alarm with that information, but just the importance of measuring it, measuring the electric field, the magnetic field, the dirty electricity, and the wireless technology. Because that's the thing, is a lot of the appliances, they're putting wireless technology components into it, which never used to have before. Those energy efficient, all of that kind of stuff. So dirty electricity isn't usually a problem with appliances. But I've also learned to say never say never, because you just have to measure it. And you can get some of these handheld measuring devices. Not everybody needs one. So a lot of the teachers that I used to work with, they would get one and just share it around. So they would get a meter for electric fields and magnetic fields, which often go together, and then the wireless technology with the radio frequency meter, and then the dirty electricity meter. So they would have those 3 meters that measured those 4 different frequencies, and share them and share them around. It's not as complicated as it sounds, even though it can feel really complicated. So the induction stoves, I have measured some of them that have been very, very high in magnetic fields, but but it's been years since I've measured it. So like Magda said, like the technology changes all the time. So measuring it is really useful. And I'm happy to kind of walk you through some of that too, because it can be very complicated. But turning things on and off, like a lot of people will say, how do you measure it? If you turn the power off to your home or to your apartment, then anything that's plugged in or whatever, it cuts the power unless it has a battery. So then you can measure in your home with the power turned off if there are sources of any frequencies, right? So it's like the process of elimination, but it can be quite simple just with a couple of different types of strategies on identifying sources and then eliminating them if you can. If you can't eliminate them, blocking them. But I'm not a really big blocker type unless it's totally encased and like covered, like when we blocked. I'm not a big fan of different paint and stuff because of Magda was saying that reflecting and that re-radiating component of some of the shielding can be really problematic unless you really know what you're doing. So I'm probably opening up another can of worms, but I'll leave it at that unless there's more about that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I have a few more if you have time. Could people with pacemakers or other implanted electronic devices be harmed with the induction stove?
Have you measured, like we haven't done anything with the induction stove really, but the pacemakers used to be affected by a microwave oven, for example. And so if you had a pacemaker, you were told not to be in the kitchen when your microwave oven is on. What they've done since then is they've shielded the pacemakers. So the pacemakers, a lot of the newer pacemakers aren't affected by this radiation. There's no interference. The thing is, we haven't shielded our heart, right? So, you know, shielding the pacemaker is one thing, but shielding the heart is quite different. So, so if you have a pacemaker, you can, and it's a modern one, then chances are it's not going to be adversely affected by the radiation, but that doesn't mean the rest of your body isn't either. So,
okay, thanks. Another one, is anxiety a characteristic of electrosensitive people? Anxiety, fear, depression, etc.
Very much so. Yeah. These emotional reactions are increasingly common among people who are electrosensitive, and it's anxiety and depression that are the two really big ones that are already affecting a large population globally. And I think what this radiation does is it increases your stress response. So, you know, if you see something, a car driving towards you, you know, it causes this panic response. And, you know, you might be able to avoid it. You might not be able to avoid it. But with the radiation, you don't see it coming towards you. You just feel it. A lot of people who are electrosensitive have told me that when they go shopping in a large store, you know, a large grocery store that has, you know, halogen lighting and a lot of people, and they're using their cell phones, they tell me that they have an anxiety, they get a stress response as soon as they go in there. And what they have to do is they have to make a list of what they want to buy, and they buy it as quickly as possible and get out of the store as quickly as possible because they can feel that anxiety. They don't know what it's attributed to. Some people think it's just being in public with other people. But if we were to eliminate the radiation, chances are they wouldn't have that kind of reaction. And that stress response causes secondary biological problems, depending on which hormones are being released into your body. So it's a little complex, but basically it's just an increase in your stress reaction. And I know that when I'm stressed, I have difficulty thinking clearly. You know, my mind doesn't work so well. And if that's happening on a regular basis in schools, for example, with kids that have Wi-Fi, right? How can they learn when their body's being stressed, and they're having a hard time functioning, they're having a hard time concentrating, they can't remember things. So they have to develop different mechanisms in order to remember and in order to be able to respond. And they shouldn't have to do that. I mean, we shouldn't have an environment that's toxic to kids in schools when they're trying to learn. And the same goes for teachers. Teachers are having a hard time with this as well. So whatever the stress response brings up in you are the symptoms that you're going to experience. And anxiety, depression are two very common ones. Sheena, did you?
I was going to add to paper when you were looking at the cordless telephone and people would go into tachycardia. So they would be physiologically going into a stress response, a very acute stress response. And one of the women, when Magda was doing her research, she was thinking, oh my gosh, like I couldn't understand what was going on. Every time I felt like I was having a panic attack. So it was a physiological response. Her heart was actually going into tachycardia in the presence of this wireless technology, and she could not understand it because she doesn't feel stressed. She didn't feel, because Magda, so there's two different aspects to this. There's a physiological response, and then there can be a psychological response to having such a physiological response. It's not just that simple, but there is definitely aspect to it. About the induction stove too, Magda's talking about the wireless piece. The magnetic piece is probably more of a problem with the induction stove. So really what I would recommend is for them to actually talk to their doctors, because those pacemakers and those different, because again, they've changed the technology. They may or may not be shielded for that magnetic field. Like Magda said, they started to always say people stay away from your cordless telephone and don't use any wireless. And then they said, oh no, we'll shield it. So then that wasn't a problem. So finding out about the induction stove with a really high magnetic field. But like Magda was saying, none of us should be exposed to this electrosmog. Many of us are resilient enough to deal with a little bit of exposure, but many of us aren't.
Sheena, you mentioned a very important subject, in my opinion, is physiological or is like psychological origin of the symptoms. Sometimes I am myself in a place that I know there's a lot of radiation, and I really don't know if the symptoms I am experiencing is coming from I am creating with my mind that I know that I have a lot of Wi-Fi routers, people with cell phone, or is a really physiological response of my body. I think this is very important, and I really don't know exactly. I know that I feel better when I'm away from wireless device. I'm in the nature. Of course, I know I'm okay. But sometimes I am close with this device and I don't feel bad. Sometimes I feel. So, this very important differentiation of the origin, if it's psychosomatic or is physiological. This is very important.
It is, and we would probably need another hour and a half to talk about exactly how I think about all of that too, because working with people over the last 20 years, I've started to realize that, like I was saying, it's not just, X and Z, just like the symptoms. It's not just like this exposure causes this symptom. It's very intricate. The bottom line is you want to minimize it wherever you can. You want to sleep in that clean environment so you build up your resilience. You just made a great point about going out in nature, getting up to see the sunrise, spending time in water. There's so many ways that we have evolved that are going to, fill our cup of health up so we can be resilient to the different types of exposures that we have, whether it's stressful, emotional exposures, whether it's stressful electromagnetic exposures, because we all have different stages of our lives. As you know, you've been more tolerant and more resilient at different stages, depending on what else is going on. So it's this whole, not where are you at physiologically, where are you at with respect to trauma or stress. So there's lots of pieces to the puzzle, but that's the neat part, is we're starting to really understand if we look at your system and start to tease out, okay, so what are your priorities with a toxin load? What is your priority with this physiological or psychological stress response? And we're really starting to be able to tease some of that out to help people really live joyful lives.
Sheena, would you like to mention anything about auricular chromotherapy?
Yeah. In 2019, I learned about a trauma treatment for stress and anxiety. And it's using the acupuncture points on your earlobe that are associated with parts of your brain that are associated with an emotional response and the memory. And you can, sometimes people have an event like a car accident or something that they've seen or something that they've witnessed, and they just can't get the image out of their head. They just can't get beyond it. It kind of, comes up in their dreams. They think about it a lot, all that kind of stuff. With this trauma treatment, you can literally shine a light on their earlobe for 3 minutes while they bring up this image and bring up this emotional response of this trauma. And with that light treatment, they can really let that down. They can really shift from a sympathetic response of flight and fight into a parasympathetic response. It sounds too good to be true. And when I first started using it and teaching about it and stuff, it was just miraculous. So I now teach that to a lot of healthcare providers as a tool in their toolbox, whether they're, dealing with first responders that see a lot of very, very difficult events that, they can't quite get away from. Car accidents, kids, dentists, a whole bunch of different healthcare providers are starting to utilize this tool. So, like I said, I could talk another hour and a half about it.
You can press with your fingers the point. You can press with the fingers or just with the light?
You find the different points. It's a very simple process, but there's a lot of nuances that's why I ended up doing this 12-hour online training to teach people how to do it. Part of learning how to do it is really experiencing it yourself, which is a really powerful aspect. So you find the acupuncture points that are associated with your event, and there's a specific protocol on how to do that. So yeah, it's very, very simple, but incredibly effective. Yeah.
Nice. Anna, do you want to read another question? We have a couple more minutes.
Okay. The other one is, what is the relationship between MCS and EHS, multi-chemical sensitivity? And
Magda, do you want to? Often people who are multiple chemical sensitivity can be electrohypersensitive, and vice versa. There's no, other than your response to those toxins or those scents or those frequencies, it's, and I want to be careful how I'm saying it because it's interesting. There is like a strong reactive response, whereas one person will have that response where somebody else exposed to the exact same environment has a very different response. And again, it depends on what else is going on in their system, what other toxins they have, what other experiences they have, what their system is able to deal with, what their system, their body has decided is a very significant threat and reacts that way. As far as I know, there's not a real direct link between multiple chemical sensitivity and EHS, but often people that have one often have the other. Magda, do you have more to add?
I was just going to say that I think it relates to your immune system. And if your immune system is compromised, either by being hyperactive or underactive, you're going to respond to these different things in your environment. And so if you have a compromised immune system, whether you're exposed to chemicals, to insect bites, to pollen, dust, electromagnetics, your body's going to react because of the state of your immune system. So getting your immune system as healthy as possible is really critical. And, you know, if you had a really good medical doctor, they could advise you on how to do that. And by improving the quality of your environment, improving your nervous system, improving your immune system, this is all going to help you recover from electro hypersensitivity, so that when you go out into a potentially toxic environment, your system won't react as strongly and you won't have as many symptoms as you had before.
Yeah, and that nervous system, immune system, a very, very important connection.
Thank
I
you.
have a. Go ahead,
ahead.
Anna. I do.
No,
Go
go ahead.
go. Okay. It's a question about the name. Yeah, I always think about this EHS name. Also because I don't like the H. I don't like to call hyper, because it seems that I don't like the hyper. Also, usually we don't know how to talk about this condition, that we don't say it's a condition, it's a disease, bunch of symptoms. Is kind of hard to talk about this condition. We are saying condition because I think condition is the best word. I also think that 100% is affected. We have these percentages of population, but usually people talk about this, about a disease or a problem, or this people is the problem. And I don't like this, because you put the focus on the sensitivity of the people, not in the pollutant. It's a pollutant. It's a toxic pollutant. So it's a narrative that put the focus in the person is the problem. Everybody is happy with wireless, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth, and you are complaining. So you are the problem. Everybody is happy, you know? That's very complicated. So I heard in your, I saw in your slide that you use this name, EMR syndrome, right?
That's right.
And when I talked to Dr. Hardell, he used the microwave syndrome name. And I think everybody is looking for a new name. I don't know, but EHS is maybe the most popular. That we need to be popular. We need to reach more people. So I would like to hear you too, maybe you, Magda, that you talk about this. What do you think is the best name that we need also to be strategic, get in the media? And I would like to hear you.
Well, there were so many names used to describe this that the scientific community said, look, we need one name. And they got a bunch of scientists together, formed a committee. I sat on that committee, and we went through a number of different names. And we had medical doctors and engineers and a lot of different people with different expertise to try to pick out a name that would apply to what we're talking about, and that everyone would use that name. And the name they came up with was electromagnetic radiation syndrome. So that was the name that the majority selected. I think it's fine. I agree with you that hypersensitivity implies that there's something wrong with the person. I think the best description of this comes from Sweden, where they say that I'll use sensitivity, is an environmentally induced disability. It's not a disease. It's not a disorder. It's an environmentally induced disability, just like someone who's crippled, can't walk up a flight of stairs. They're not disabled if they have an elevator, but they are disabled if there's a flight of stairs. So I think taking the onus off the individual and putting it on the pollutant in the environment that's caused the problem is really, really critical. And that's what this group tried to do with the electromagnetic radiation syndrome terminology.
But there is a difference between people that really is hypersensitive, and the electromagnetic radiation syndrome in other people that are not hypersensitive?
There is a difference, and I think it was Ole Johansson in Sweden who came up with the term hypersensitivity. And I asked him about this many years ago, and he said, we call it hyper because some people are more sensitive than others, just like your canary in the coal mine, right? There's nothing wrong with the canary. It just happens to react before humans. And that's a real advantage to humans, right? So electro hypersensitivity, if you have that disorder or whatever you want to call it, it allows you to determine whether you're exposed or not. And that's an advantage. I'm electrosensitive. When I measure my blood, it goes into that rouleau formation. That's the only reason I know I'm hypersensitive, because if you use a cell phone around me, I can't tell. I don't know when I'm exposed or not. So I have to use a meter to tell me whether I'm exposed to avoid exposure. But if you're electro-hypersensitive and you get a headache instantly, then you know there's something in your environment. You can either try to measure it or you can simply, go into a different environment. So there's a real advantage to people who can sense that sensitivity, that extreme sensitivity. And the rest of us can benefit from that. And if we can minimize their sensitivity so that they're not as adversely affected, I think that's a real benefit to them as well. As long as they know they're exposed, they can tell they're exposed, but they're not having severe symptoms. I think that's really, really beneficial to them as well.
And minimizing the exposure in the environment at the same time, which helps everyone. So it's treating the environment rather than the individual is absolutely critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we didn't get in the best name that's also spread in the world and everybody uses. Is EHS is the most popular today, but not the best name.
No.
Yeah, I think it's amazing what you just said. There's nothing wrong with the canary in the coal mine. That's a very good. I will take that to use here in our. That's very good. It's a very healthy and we need a name that puts the focus on the pollutant, not in the sensitivity.
That's right.
Yeah, because if you put too much focus in the sensitivity, it seems the problem is the sensitivity, not the pollutant.
Exactly.
That's the problem of the name.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have the last question here. Eric, regarding the hearing aids with Bluetooth. He said that there's no longer models without hearing aids without Bluetooth. So if there's any recommendation for people with this.
There are hearing aids without Bluetooth.
Are there?
Oh, yeah. And you can buy them. Well, I know you can buy them here in Canada. And there's absolutely no radiation coming from them at all. But you have to ask for them specifically, because the hearing aids they have now, they talk to each other via Bluetooth. So you have one here, and how's radiation getting through, right? It's going right through your brain. And because you never move the hearing aid, it's always in the same spot, the chances of you developing a tumor increase astronomically, because you have to give, you have to take it away, give time for your brain to recover. But you can buy hearing aids with no radiation at all. You just have to do your homework and look into them. They are available technically.
And asking for them.
Mm-hmm. Asking for them, yeah.
With no antennas. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're getting into the end. I ask everyone to say your final comments, final message. Can we start, Sylvia? We start finishing.
Yes. Well, this topic is so important. And I hope lots of people can watch it and can learn as much as we did here. And spread this to people, because there's so many people that are sick and they don't have no idea why they are sick. And their kids are sick and their family are sick. And they have all these devices in their room that they sleep in. So this is so important. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melina, your final considerations.
Well, I'd like to thank you both to be here with us. As Silvia said, it's a very important topic to discuss, and I'm with you doing this to send this message for the world, and I hope the most of people can hear us and to have better health. Thank you a lot.
Anna, your considerations.
I'm very pleasant to be here, and I want to thank you for all questions, answers. Thank you very much.
Sheena, your final message.
There are always solutions. People, I don't know how many times I've gone in and they said, oh, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. You can always find a solution. Always. Like there are always ways to access the technology in a safer way. There are always solutions. So people who have kids, people who have guests visiting with differing needs, there are always solutions. And they don't seem very simple and accessible sometimes, but just with a little bit of care and brainstorming, we can always come up with solutions. And it's been a privilege to be with you tonight. There's a friend of mine that always says better together. And I think that's so true, right? Like we're better together, finding solutions, sharing solutions, and just educating, because we want to go forward together, fully accessing technology, but being really, really healthy about it. So looking forward to more.
Thank you. Dr. Magda, your final message.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for what you're doing with the slow phone movement in Brazil. It's wonderful. You're really leading the way for a lot of other countries to follow. So I'd like to let you know how much I appreciate that. And I'd like to volunteer, Sheena, for if you'd like to do anything in hospitals, if you have someone who's electrosensitive who needs to be accommodated, I know she'd be very willing to help you. She's been successful before. And the more hospitals I think we can get on side, eventually they'll start doing it themselves. And Sheena's already been approached by some hospitals saying, how do you do this? So it's beginning to change so slowly. But the more countries we can get involved, the better. And if you're interested in the auricular chromotherapy and helping people who have anxiety issues and traumatic issues, whether it's dealing with electromagnetic pollution or some other issue, by getting rid of that physiological stress, you allow your body to heal. So it's whether it's mental or physiological, they both lead to healing, and they both need to be known by as many people as possible. And I'd like to thank Sylvia again for her book. We need one for doctors. We have one for parents. We need one for schools. We need one for doctors. And we need one for hospitals. So, you know, if you have a bit of time, Sylvia, you can probably do some more work in that area. So thank you very much for this opportunity, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your website from the Rose Lab, roselab.com, right?
Correct.
roselab.com. Our website is lowphone.org. We have our Telegram channel in English. That's Lowphone Global, t.me/Lowphone Global. And our YouTube channel, we have a lot of videos in English. Most is in Portuguese, but in Spanish, but we have some in English. And we thank you very much, Dr. Havas, Sheena, Sylvia, Anna, Melina, and Aline, that's in the backstage for this moment that we are planting this seed. It's very important to keep persistent over the years with happiness and enjoying the path. Okay? Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.